The COVID-19 pandemic swept across the globe, overwhelming health systems and causing distress among populations. Yet while COVID-19 started as a health crisis, present incidences suggest that the pandemic is quickly evolving into crisis of poverty, hunger, and malnutrition which burden small-scale farmers, agricultural workers, landless people, and slum dwellers the most. Asian civil society organizations have been actively calling on their country's governments to address the crisis through mass testing, support for the public health sector, and aid for poor and vulnerable populations. ANGOC member organizations have also engaged in efforts to educate populations and provide support to communities as the battle against this pandemic rages on.
First case of COVID in Bangladesh officially declared on 8 March. So people working in the city areas, particularly the capital cities and the other big cities, started moving to the rural areas because this country's backbone of economy is agriculture. Unfortunately, over the period of time, we forgot it and agriculture became a very fragile sector. But COVID is a wake-up call. COVID taught us this, what needs to be done, what should be our priority for the inclusive development. So as ALRD, our organization, this is a very large networking organization all over the country. We started communicating our partners. We started to gather information, what is happening with the health service of the people, general mass, and also what is happening with their livelihood. So it has been very useful to engage our partners so that they could connect with these government services to help out the people and also to do some sort of action or raising voice through monitoring and engaging our trained media people in different parts of the countries. So that was the effort from ALRD, boosting up the energy, motivation, and connecting to each other, so was of very much help. So that is the strength of ALRD. But finally, it is to be realized that still agriculture is the highest priority sector for the country, where the large number of more than 40% people are engaged there. And that can ensure our food security, immune system, nutrition, and their livelihood.
In Nepal, farmers have been negatively affected since the government announced a nationwide lockdown in March 2020.
एक पोका तेललाई 150 पर्छ भने 200 पर्न थाल्यो 1500 पर्ने चामललाई 2000 पर्छ
केही भाउ पाइएन अरु भन्दा पनि धेरै त अब गाडी भाडा पनि उठ्दैन हाम्रो गाडी अब महँगो छ बजारमा गाजर बिक्या छैन.
CSRC started a media campaign called No Lockdown in Agriculture. CSRC staff also wrote blogs and articles that shed light on farmers' situation. CSRC then presented the situation of farmers among stakeholders.
किसानहरुले जुन उत्पादनको क्रममा भण्डारणको क्रममा र बजार व्यवस्थापनमा फेरि थुप्रै चुनौतीहरु पनि थपिएको छ.
अब गढवा गाउँपालिकामा बाँझो जग्गाहरु राख्न हुँदैन. यदि जग्गा जोत्ने चाहन्छन् र जग्गा धनीले दिन चाहिरहेछन् भने गाउँपालिका समन्वयकारी भूमिका खेलेर 1 कट्ठाको 700 रुपैयाँको दरले जग्गा धनीलाई पैसा उपलब्ध गराउने र जग्गालाई खेती गर्ने किसिमको हामी निर्णय गरेर
CSRC staff donated a total of 260,457 Nepali rupees to help poor farmers fight against hunger. The organization also distributed health and sanitation materials to 5 localities. CSRC was able to provide direct support to communities by providing seeds to 211 youth farmers in Mahotari district and distributing food items to 169 families in Mahotari and Sarlahi districts. Through a CSRC partner, the Village Land Rights Forum, tapari or leaf plates and vegetables were also provided to communities in the Dang district. Similarly, the NGO Federation of Nepal also conducted relief efforts, gathered information on the crisis, and provided spaces to serve as quarantine centers. NFN also forms part of the high-level monitoring team, along with the National Human Rights Commission of Nepal and several other organizations. NFN has begun its research and fact-finding missions regarding the impacts of, responses to, and the country's recovery from COVID-19.
The government has issued a stark warning that we are at a tipping point on coronavirus.
In India, the situation was no different, rather worse. A complete lockdown on all non-essential activities was imposed. For a country of more than 150 million migrant workers, the odds were very difficult. What followed next was absolute mayhem.
And this family of 5 has to walk about 300 kilometers to get home.
As soon as the reports of the reverse migration of these workers started pouring in from all parts of the country, Ekta Parishad plunged into action. Being one of the largest people's movement in India, coordination points were set up in 14 states of the country. Around 3,000 volunteers engaged themselves in the immediate relief work. The most urgent demand was food supplies because most of these workers are daily wage earners, having no savings at all. Along with food, rations which included grains, pulses, vegetables, bread, spices and cooking oil was also the apex priority for Ekta Parishad during the crisis. From east to west and north to south, the extensive and deep-rooted volunteer base of Ekta Parishad made sure that help reaches out to the most vulnerable groups of the people. Along with food, masks were also distributed and made sure that no one is left behind. However, from Bhopal, the volunteers galvanized a different approach. They reached out to the frontline workers fighting the epidemic. They provided meals for the police officers, the doctors and medical staff, and the employees of the municipal corporation. While all this immediate response was being carried out by the proactive volunteers, there was a growing concern about the future of these returning migrant laborers. As is observed in the Indian subcontinent, the reason of migration is due to unavailability of resources and scarcity of water in the villages. Hence, the efforts were made by Ekta Parishad to create employment in the village itself. Water harvesting structures like ponds, wells, canals, and small check dams were developed through Shramdan. Shramdan is a Hindi word which means collective contribution of labor. As close as 100 Shramdan camps were organized in villages. These engaged thousands of migrant workers and villages and ensured food for work as a relief component of their labor. As for the future, Ekta Parishad plans to encourage setting up of various community-based models of livelihood activities. These include cottage industries, organic farming and cooperatives. Setting up green banks and facilitating public distribution system would ensure food security. Advocacy for strengthening rural economy and labor welfare through legal and policy reform with the state governments have already begun.
Greetings from the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement of Sri Lanka. As we all know, COVID-19 has posed a great challenge for all of us, particularly Sarvodaya being a grassroots development organization. since late March, we have been affected directly by the COVID-19 because of the lockdown and also the the resulting socio-economic impact. So Sarvodaya is an organization working on a holistic vision of development, working in more than 15,000 grassroots communities in Sri Lanka. So when the COVID-19 hit us in March, we had to directly look after the communities which were working with us, who were affected economically, because there were many families who were daily wage earners and who could not sustain themselves for beyond a few days. So the initial phase was a combination of public health messages, because we could use our extensive infrastructure throughout the country through social media, and also with safe distance they could also carry the messages to the community to protect the vulnerable groups in the community. So combined with this public health campaign, education campaign, we immediately mobilized our volunteers and resources to help the families who were affected by way of providing dry rations and also distributing, linking them with essential services like healthcare within the government safety precautions. When it comes to the involvement of the youth, particularly, we were able to mobilize them in disseminating these messages through social media, countering certain hate speech, stigma and discrimination. So this young talent was mobilized by Sarvodaya to counter some of the challenges that we were facing in terms of certain groups trying to stigmatize those who were affected by the COVID-19 epidemic. So today we are mobilizing the entire infrastructure of Sarvodaya, which is covering the entire country in the next phase, because we have been having cluster transmission in Sri Lanka, not community transmission, but 3 weeks ago we were faced with another very big cluster in one particular area of Sri Lanka, and there is now again lockdown, localized curfew in those areas, and we are now doing the very same emergency response that we adopted, and we are also looking at long term new normal, how to prepare these communities. So community engagement and community empowerment in order to live with this virus is our objective, and we are preparing communities for that. Thank you.
In Indonesia situations, even though we already have agrarian reform policy, still a long ride for peasants, for small scale farmers. Majority is small scale peasants, which is only on less than half hectares of land. And there is a big allocations, thousands of hectares for mining, thousands of hectares for plantations, monoculture systems, and also big portions of land also for forest industry. And it's most of in our country is overlap with people's land rights. And current situations with the impact of COVID-19, thousands of laborers is also being fired because the economic crisis. It's become also challenges, but also opportunity for our movement to connect each other. So during the COVID-19, we are trying to prioritize our market, not public at large, but only to distribute our food productions from all the villages to the priority consumers, which is we collaborate with the labor movement. For us, I think it is our breakthrough on how to not depend on the mainstream systems in food systems. And then also how we do food exchange between the peasants and fisherfolk community. So I think the lesson learned that we can get that still, of course, land right is essential for our struggle.
My name is Checha Rian. Director of Star Cambodia, a local NGO in Cambodia. I would like to inform you on the challenge of COVID-19 pandemic in Cambodia, starting since March 2020 until now, that had a challenge negative impact on my organization as well as the livelihood of Cambodia as a whole. One of the volunteer action for Cambodia program, which is an income generation program to support Star Cambodia, was not functioned during this period. Many activities of field work were delayed and replanned according to the rule of Royal Government of Cambodia to keep precaution measures by following the social distance. In order to respond to the difficult situation, Star Cambodia had engaged the youth and local authority at the targeted community to conduct awareness raising on the COVID-19 in order to protect the welfare and the health of our target community by providing mask, face mask, sanitizer material as well as leaflet and poster.
The Philippines has the highest number of COVID-19 cases in Southeast Asia and is still enduring the world's longest lockdown. Small producers are heavily impacted by travel restrictions brought on by the lockdown. Many are unable to send their produce to consumers. They are also struck by the drop in demand for agricultural goods as a result of consumers' reduced purchasing power amid layoffs and other livelihood losses. Members of PhilDRA, a network of NGOs in the Philippines, helped ease rural communities' burdens by directly providing financial aid, food assistance, seeds, hygiene kits, IECs, and PPEs. As of June this year, the PhilDRA network was able to reach more than 76,000 individuals with more than 44 million pesos worth of cash and in-kind assistance. The network also coordinated with its members to aid the Mahintana Foundation's relief efforts. PhilDRA is also active in Code NGO's DRR Hub and has conducted several fora related to this pandemic. These initiatives serve to highlight the ingenuity of land rights CSOs in persevering to help communities during these extraordinary circumstances. And while the world continues its battle against the microscopic enemy, civil society also continues to advocate for secure land rights, which will lead to better food security and greater adaptive capacity during pandemics such as this one. During and even beyond this ongoing pandemic, these citizens' actions should be supported, guided, and sustained so that they become a truly transformative force in society.